Ladies and gentlemen, today, the wandering investor, Ladislas helps individuals reach freedom and prosperity through the use of internationalization and diversification strategies. He has an educational YouTube channel with 22,000 subscribers at the time of shooting, literally walks the walk. Like, he records the interviews in the places he talks about, in the places itself. So he talks about Kenya, he talks about Serbia, he talks about Mexico, Medellin. He literally travels to those places, interviews lawyers, all kind of professionals, experts there. And we met in Rio. And something that I liked about Ladislas is that in 2 minutes that we were sitting at the table, he was already making friends with people next to us. So it's definitely a pleasure to have him today in the show. You're going to learn a lot. And for the interaction that we had already previously, it's going to be very, very fun. A pleasure to have you here. Ladislas, welcome to the show.
Bill, the pleasure is mine, Miquel.
So, where are you connecting from today?
Near Paris.
Yes, Europe. Fantastic. So, first of all, what are 3 accomplishments that you are most proud of?
A lot of people like to create philosophy around these points and think hard about their biggest failures, their biggest accomplishments, etc. I just I'm more relaxed. I just kind of live my life. So in general terms, I'd say the accomplishments would be 1, my family, and then 2, the level of freedom that I've managed to achieve for myself and my family. I think these would be the 2 things that matter to me. Any third point would just be cosmetic or just a bit of like flattery, to be honest with you.
What does family bring to you in your life that it's something you value so much? Puts
Purpose.
Everything else in the other lower
Purpose.
Stages. Purpose.
It's at the end of the day, it's the only thing that will mean something after I die. Making money, blah blah, all of that's fun and well, but once you die, it doesn't really mean much. What matters is what you left in the world. So this I'd say is my greatest accomplishment.
Is it something you think about often, about your death? Sure. And legacy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not scared of death. I'm not worried about death. Actually, I think that compared to most people, I'm okay with death. Because a lot of people they're so self-absorbed, especially in kind of this space of like internationalization and all that. People have they try to build a lot of status. They're obsessed with the self, but they're not able to look beyond. So we talk about death. I'm fine. I could die tomorrow, and I would feel I had a very fulfilling life.
I see. It is something I wanted to talk later on, talking about real estate, but since we already started the episode with this, and I know you're into these conversations that are, just not just superficial stuff, but really like important stuff. It is something you already planned, like death. What happens if I die tomorrow? Like this will happen. Do you have a will? Do you have something to perpetuate this generational wealth that the wealth you already created?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a will in place.
Yes. And how is this going to be managed? Of course, as far as you feel comfortable talking about, but how is this going to be managed? Because it's incredible. People will know in a second, like all the real estate that you have across the world, like different countries, like jurisdictions, languages, like everything. As diverse as you can get, Ladislas is like there, So how is somebody who is not you going to manage all this? What's the structure? What's the system?
Yeah, the more international you are, the more complicated your legacy is going to be.
Totally.
To manage. So typically people would want to have a trust in place, but it's easy to say have a trust, okay? But once you actually start doing business on the ground, having a trust in some random country can lead to a lot of complications when trying to operate operationally, like actually on the ground. If you're purchasing property in whatever country with a trust from the Cook Islands, It all sounds great on paper. You'll see people on YouTube and on Instagram saying Cook Islands Trust, Cook Islands Trust. But once you actually start putting all of these things together, you're actually trying to close a deal. It can just add a lot of complexity. So sure, as you're nearing death, you should gradually move to such more complex structures. But if you believe that you still have quite the lifespan, you should prioritize rather being flexible, to be able to grow your wealth and be able to act relatively quickly. So in this case, typically, companies, etc., are a better way of operating. So, am I worried too much about the structure for my death now that I'm in my mid-30s? No. Will my attitude change once I start hitting, the big 60? Yes. So it's something that that is meant to gradually evolve. And, realistically, whatever assets or real estate I have now will still have it when I'm 60. It'll probably have shifted a few times around. So you can still structure your investments in a way that are good for asset protection, without necessarily going into, Cook Island trusts, just to give an example.
I see. To give the audience an understanding, some context, share a bit more about the countries you put your flag, you put like some real estate in, so people can grasp when we are talking about complexity, because I know it. I talked with you about this before, but share a bit if you feel like the countries
Sure.
you've been into, yeah, so they can grasp. Okay.
So just as a bit of background, so initially I studied in Canada and Australia, went to business and law school in Australia, started working in corporate, so at Nestle, the big food company in Switzerland at their headquarters, and then they sent me to Africa for 7 years. So I actually spent most of my 20s in Africa, managing various businesses for Nestle. And my last role there was being on the executive board of Nestle Ghana, running the milk business for a few West African countries. So Ghana, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, Liberia. At the age of 30, I was like, cool, it's been good. I did the whole corporate thing in Africa with Nestle. 30s, I want to look for a new challenge. So initially I wanted to look for a job in Dubai, because I like the Middle East. But then I started doing deals. I took a bit of a break, started doing real estate deals, and then it just never stopped. And then now I do this full time. So over the years, I've had, and I have, so real estate in the US, in West Africa, in the Middle East, in Eastern Europe, in the Balkans, in Western Europe as well. And in the last few months, I have made a few moves in Latin America, so Mexico, Colombia, etc.
Yeah, so many things here. It's really complex. Like, some people are just focused on what market, and you chose to diversify, which is, by the way, a signature of your brand, right? This internationalization, this diversification, that you have in your motto. You
Because
choose
I'm
to
interested
spread.
in, I don't have any strong, look, there are a few ways to make money. One is to really specialize in something in a market. You become you specialize in like real estate in Holland or whatever. And that's great. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is just to, and that's always been my preferred way, because I've lived in, I don't know, like 12, 13 countries by now. I've traveled to 100 countries. I speak a bunch of languages. The world. So, if you want to understand my framework, in my mind, there's always the map of the world, right? With a bunch of figures. Because I spend my time, I read, like I read every day for hours. And at times, things start coming out and start linking together. And you're like, there's probably an opportunity there from a macro point of view. And then what I do then is I go there for a few weeks or a few months, explore on the ground, how do I play this, right? So when I did this for Colombia, for example, went there, and I was looking, okay, cool. How can I play it? You know, what are the best ways to play it? And then I ended up doing both real estate and the local stock market. I did this a few years ago where all the signs were green for Uzbekistan. I went there initially with the idea of potentially buying some prime real estate in Tashkent, the capital city. And, you know, I went into it, and technically as a foreigner, you're not allowed to own real estate. But if you do it through a company, it's okay. But if you own real estate through a company, you're not supposed to rent it out. But they don't seem to care too much if it's just one or two. Like the whole thing was just very gray and quite complex. And then I looked at the local stock market, and there were some companies that were dishing out dividend yields of 20% that have no debt on their balance sheets. They're growing 30% a year. I was like, okay, this is probably an easier way to play Uzbekistan. You know, how about I buy a cement company that is just minting cash? How about I play real estate this way through the cement company
Incredible.
than buying the real estate? So that's what I do. I'm completely flexible in terms of where I go, when I go. I start with a macro focus and then go somewhere and then figure out how do I play it. Like 2 years ago, I was in Serbia for quite a bit because I liked it. I like Serbia. There's geopolitically, it just made sense. I couldn't figure out a way to play it. Like real estate was already quite expensive. It went up even more, so I was wrong. You know, that could have been a good play. The local stock market was just completely illiquid and had crazy rules. If you sell your stocks, you have to wait like 6 months to repatriate your money because you need the government to certify that you paid your capital gains taxes properly. And just like some wild stuff. So I didn't find a way to play Serbia. You know, I like the macro story, but there was no real way apart from, I guess, starting a business or something, which I wasn't particularly keen on to play Serbia. So you never really know. So, you know, you go to these countries and you see, and it's typically countries that don't have as much. In the emerging markets, you have less data, right? They're typically data poor. So it's not like the US where you just go on Zillow and there's like the MLS and like, you know, there's AI doing all the analysis. Like literally you could say, you know, what house should I buy in like whatever city, and like an algo would say these are the best metrics. It's like we're gradually reaching this stage in the US. Like in these other markets, there's very little data. Not like most things online are completely unreliable. You need to be there and to spend time to see what's actually happening.
Well, totally. I wonder when I listen to you, and probably the audience is asking the same. First of all, how do you find out? There are 196 jurisdictions, right? How Ladislas finds out about Uzbekistan, you know, and a cement company and the stock market, and like how in the world you end up there, you know, or what you say you
Reading.
read a lot. Yeah,
I read a
exactly.
lot,
That's what I thought. But what's the source of information? Like,
a bit of everything.
how do you separate, oh, this is good source of information, this might not be?
Most source of information is crap. We're honest with each other because
Yeah,
everything's
yeah.
become so political.
Mm-hmm.
So people just need to read from very different sources, right? If people are just going to be reading like the BBC and like, you know, whatever mainstream news, they're very misinformed, like extremely misinformed. So it's absolutely non-negotiable if you want to go into kind of the macro space and not just specialize in your market. In this case, it doesn't matter as much. But if you're trying to like really understand trends, and what's actually happening in the world, you need to be reading different sources of information. So this means, yes, reading Western mainstream news, or, you know, also reading, like I've been reading The Economist since the age of 13 every week, from like the cover till the end. You know, so every week it's like 3 hours or so that I spend reading The Economist. And then you want to read as well other sources of information from other perspectives. So read Russian news, read perspectives from the Middle East, such as Al Jazeera in Qatar or Press TV in Iran. Even go read some like radical left-wing stuff from the Venezuelan government. Like everything brings a certain perspective. Just understand that anything you're reading has an agenda, right? And also go read these crazy websites with like conspiracy stuff. And it's not to say that like, the conspiracy theories are right. The point is, because anything you read in mainstream news, these guys will like come up with like something that it's a conspiracy. Fine. But what it trains you to do is to always be very critical of everything, right? So obviously don't go spend half your time on conspiracy websites, because you also have a very distorted view of life. But do allocate, a bit of time every week, just browsing these sometimes pretty crazy articles. But there are some very interesting nuggets there. And they help you to think critically. And when some of these things are right, you're generally way ahead of the curve. So read, and go everywhere. You do not, like, people, especially now, people are just so offended when they read something that they don't agree with, or hear something that they don't agree with. It's okay. Like, I don't mind reading stuff that I completely disagree with, because there's always something to learn from the other side.
Totally, especially in an era where we have social media feeding us more of what we like to read, to
And
spend
even
time
that,
on. It's like we get more polarized every time, right?
exactly. And again, there's an agenda behind these. There's a political agenda behind these algorithms.
Yeah. Similar to Bitcoin, they want to have liquidity in the market, and boom, there's a lot of posts about bull run, and then this, and then agenda with
Yeah.
as well other illnesses or pandemics going on, etc. Totally true. I acknowledge something that is about what you do. For example, I've been to different countries, and it takes time to meet the right people, the right contacts that provide you with the right information, or with some insights that you can't even find on the internet, because it's people who've been in, let's say, the Mexican government for 20 years, and they have access to insider information, or things that you cannot find mainstream. Something I acknowledge and I admire is, well, you've done that dozens of times. Like, you've literally went to a country you've never been before, start creating the roots, the network. Like, what's your strategy to, or what do you do? What's your thought process of, okay, I land in Uzbekistan, or I land in Serbia, or I land in Mexico for the first time in my life. How do you make it to, okay, let's make the most of my time here to start getting this real juice, boots on the ground?
I knock at doors. I go talk to people. That's it. I'm cold calling.
Okay.
Like,
So what
smart people are
type of
generally
people? Yeah.
lawyers, real estate agents, brokers,
Mhm.
people who work on, like, for the stock market, brokerages, etc. Just
Mhm.
call them and make them talk, say, hey, I'm interested, see what they have to say, and talk to many, because most people talk crap. So just talk to many. And then there's this whole thing of, like, you see on Twitter and all that, people are just obsessed with, like, the network and, like, blah 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 blah. Sure, it's important, but people also need to just chill out, because when you meet some of these people that are just, like, obsessed with, like, networking and blah 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 blah, it's just too much, right? It's just too much. You're not able to have a personal connection with someone who's just, like, constantly networking with everyone, and who just views himself as a networker and all of that. Just, people need to be a bit more chilled, especially in emerging markets. This whole, because you see all these, like, Europeans and Americans, they just, like, arrive and they're like, like, network and this and that. That's not how things work in, like, Colombia or in Paraguay. Like, sure, you got to network, but you got to be a bit more chilled. and spend a bit more quality time with people. And I feel like a lot of Westerners just fail to understand this. Things take time in emerging markets, and no, you don't need to be like a networking machine. um it's not because you talk to someone for like 10 minutes and you exchange business cards or whatever that like that's your network. It's absolutely not your network. It takes more to develop relationships in these countries, more personal face-to-face time. So I don't try to be obsessed with any of this. I just go, I talk to people, and then I just go with the flow. And sometimes the flow just doesn't work. Sometimes you go to places and you just don't end up meeting the right people. And, okay, that's it. And sometimes the flow takes you to very interesting places.
Yeah. And since you are dealing with investments, it's not just, oh, I'm gonna go there and spend some fun time and leave. You're actually putting part of your net worth, part of the money that also wealth affects your family, as you mentioned, the future, the legacy, right? Generationally. So it is something that you must have developed, like this sense of this I can trust, this I cannot trust, probably a sense of gut feeling of
Yeah.
instantly like, the beep, 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 the bullshit, like tit, 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 tit,
Yeah.
alarm. What's
Yeah.
something that helps you know, okay, this person I just met, it's crap. Oh, I can trust it. Is there
Yeah.
something that you've developed over years that
Yeah, the
you'd like to
bullshit alarm
share?
is, yeah, my bullshit alarm has become relatively good. I mean, there's still people that are just fantastic bullshitters, and you only figure it out after the fact at your own expense. But generally, and especially in these countries, I mean, you spend time in Brazil and in Paraguay, and like there's some really good bullshitters out there, really, really competent bullshitters. Um, and people from especially North Americans often fail to see it, because they come, or Northern Europeans as well, because they come more from like high trust cultures where there just aren't as many people that bullshit. So they're likelier to get played. But yeah, when you look, I'd say most of my life in emerging markets. So look, there's usually a target on your back. I think it's fair to say when you're a Westerner and you spend time in emerging markets, there's a lot of people that are trying to get a chunk of what you have through not the most honest means. It's not like Sweden. So you naturally develop that sense of being able to tell bullshitters apart. And then as you do business in all of these different cultures, I spend a lot of time in Africa. Now I'm spending more time in Latin America. You get to have a better feel, because again, bullshitters have some common traits across cultures, and you get a feel for it. You can weed them out a bit better over time. It comes with experience. But this is
Yeah,
really important in these markets. Very important.
yeah, totally. And something that you can perceive more, as you mentioned, something very valuable I want to highlight here for everybody, something I agree is meeting them in person multiple times.
Yeah.
Like, because meeting a lawyer via Zoom from Paraguay when you are in Ecuador, when you are
Yeah.
in Europe, one time and be like, oh, I can trust this person to help my clients and this and that, or even myself. Like, I don't know. Even when you
And
meet people twice, like in person, the third time, like they act completely differently after
yeah,
something you said via WhatsApp between the second and the third meeting.
100%.
And you see the true colors. Yeah.
Referrals work well as well, because I mean,
Yeah.
I do have quite the network now, to be fair. So often, if I arrive somewhere, often I kind of have like a list of people that I should meet. So that's one of the benefit of, knowing all these people. So there's already a bit of weeding that has happened. but you're right. Spending time with people is really important for sure. And like challenging people as well, you know, see how they react in the face of adversity.
How do you like to challenge people?
Just
in what
say
ways?
something that say something that might shock them a little bit, provoke them a little bit, just challenge them, see how they react. Because if they can't react well to a joke or a challenge, what is it going to be when later in business there's like a major disagreement and you need to work together to find a solution? Because again, they're not markets. Again, it's not America, it's not Norway, where there's a disagreement, it's like immediately you go to court. I mean, good luck going to court in Paraguay. I mean, you can go to court. It's going to take 7 years.
But you gotta
to
have the right people. Yeah,
exactly. And then it's not like actually about the court. It's about the like who you know and who you're willing to pay off. Like you don't even want to go there. It's so like people like Westerners that do business in these markets really need to understand this. Like you're really on your own. You're on your own, and there's a target on your back. That's it. And
if things go south, you are the one that's gonna probably lose against a local one who's been, I don't know, a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old lawyer who has contacts for 40 years, knows everybody. I've heard stories of everything, like literally a phone call and saying this person that needs to go to court like can't leave the country, and like blocking at the airport like the exit of that person just with phone call. It's like, wait, you're not gonna leave the country until you go to court and we solve this. And it's like, no, I'm gonna take a plane, one phone call, and this person cannot take the plane. So literally like that, just one phone call. And the whole country, like legally, of course, you can just take the car or whatever, like try to escape, but it's incredible like what they can do with the right context.
And like, I mean, like recently I have some property in Ivory Coast in West Africa, and I had a property manager, a Frenchman. He was fine, he was doing a good job, and then got a divorce, went back to France, and then I had his Ivorian wife that like stepped in. I was like a little worried. I was right to be worried, but I wasn't there. Gave her a chance. She ran away with the money. She ran away with a few months of rent and like the deposit. And I'm like, in like Colombia.
What you gonna do, right?
What are you gonna do? So sure, I have a lawyer in Ivory Coast. I like in my mind that money's a write-off, but just out of principle, if someone screws me over, I'm not gonna let that fly. So out of principle, I have a lawyer starting the court case and just like harassing her. Like it's just gonna cause her complications, and then with her own bank accounts later, she won't be able to have bank accounts. She'll have to keep cash. It's just you can't also tolerate people messing with you, but these things will happen for sure.
Totally. Part of the reward, right, is this risk, and this is something I'm wondering, where do you draw, Ladislas, the line between risk and opportunity?
Like I'm pretty tolerant of risk. I mean, I bought Russian stocks two days before the Russians invaded, so at my own expense. At my own expense, I'm very tolerant of risk. I don't know, like you just weigh it out and then you see, there's no magic formula. There's a magic formula.
But do you think being very like okay with risk, these bolder decisions, probably bolder right now than when you were younger, that maybe were more conservative because you were more like new or a novice in the market, is like this? Or do you think you became more conservative? How did that change over years?
I kind of like risk. That hasn't changed.
I'd
say, look, risk is all about position sizing, right? It's about not losing your shirt, right? So sure, I lost a bunch of money on Russian stocks, but it wasn't like fatal. Position sizing, just size accordingly, and you can have fun, take some risks, but size accordingly.
Mm-hmm. What's something you would share with your Ladislas? Like, when did you start, by the way, like investing, your first investments?
My first investment was with when I started making money working in corporate, and first major investment was a house in Texas, in Austin. Like
Around
when
what
prices
year?
were 2013, when prices were
Okay,
really low in the States. Yeah, that was good.
2023, it's 10 years.
Yeah,
What would
I sold it.
you,
I sold.
uh-huh.
Yeah,
What
I
would you
sold it.
tell your younger Ladislas about investing if you could have a conversation now that it's been a decade?
That's a good one. What would I tell my younger self? To earlier on look at other asset classes, because I was always attracted to real estate, and I went very heavy real estate early on. But the reality is, I should have also gone into stocks and other asset classes early on, just to be more diversified, and stocks often provide more alpha as well. So I think that would have been my number one advice. Don't just look at one asset class across jurisdictions, but look at multiple asset classes across jurisdictions.
I see. What's something that got you attracted to real estate and go
I
so
think
heavily with it?
just like everyone else, you can touch it, you can feel it, you live in it, so you feel you have a better understanding. You see your own family. My family's quite conservative, so they were always dealing with like a lot of real estate stuff. I figured I had a better understanding of that asset class than other asset classes, which is true, I did. But yeah, that's it.
Interesting. And I guess that over these 10 years, you had influences, probably, of course, through the authors, what you read, or maybe people in person. What are the three major, would you say, three people that you can like remember, be like, wow, these three people really impacted my life in a positive way, or even like changed the course of my life because of how big the influence was for me?
I know a lot of people are going around saying they have mentors, they do all of that. I don't know. I don't read like business books. I never read any business books. I don't read any of these, like, I don't know, inspirational self-help, all that. Like, I'm not criticizing them. It's just not what I'm into. I read a lot of history. So I guess, just books about history made me think about things. But I can't say I have like mentors or like life-changing moments, or this
Hmm.
dude that I follow that like inspired me to do this and that. That's never been
Yeah,
my process. I've just always kind of done my own thing. I'm like, obviously I'm influenced by people and by what I read and what I watch and all that. But there's no like specific,
could be
sure, I'd say
somebody
like,
from history, could be somebody from history, could be somebody. No, nothing.
yeah,
Like you just pick from everywhere.
yeah, it's just a bit from everywhere. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah.
nice, nice. Um,
I mean, I'll read a book about
uh-huh.
the like Russian Civil War, when they were trying to fight off the Bolsheviks, about like some general, and I'll read about the
Hmm.
guy, and that's great. And then I'll read about the Second World War, and then I'll read about, the Cold War,
Hmm.
or the Roman times, and
Hmm.
there's no
Yeah,
one single person.
yeah, yeah. Perfect. Before hitting record, now I wanna take another section of this episode. Before hitting record, you mentioned that you had some challenge, or you had some moment of more interaction, more back and forth you wanted to go into. Is there a topic you want to bring into the table, talk about,
Um,
the two of us?
I like. I think people need to understand that the world is changing at an objectively uncomfortable pace.
Hmm.
Like the pace of change we're witnessing in everything is quite scary, if I can put it this way. We don't understand what's going on. If we just look at like how the world changed in the last 3 years, I mean, just look at what happened in the last 3 years, like the level of change and everything that went down. And if we say that, and there's still so much uncertainty, so many things are unresolved. If we run with the assumption, that we might see just as much change in the next 3 years and then the next 3 years, etc., we won't be able to recognize our own world right now as it is. But I think the biggest piece of advice that I would have for people is to stay extremely flexible. Extremely flexible, to not get caught up in narratives. So it's very easy to get caught up in narratives. And narratives are there to provide people with a false sense of comfort. Right? So question everything that you're being told. Everything. And run the assumption that your life in 5 years' time will be very different from what it is now, and you'll have to continue adapting.
You mentioned comfort and also security. It's a narrative of, oh, I can feel safe because I know what's happening. Well, you know what they are showing in front of you, but you
Yeah.
don't really know what's happening behind. So
You
it's
don't
like,
know
oh yeah,
anything.
I can plan accordingly against what's happening, or I can protect about this. Or it's like, yeah, but you can't protect. When you want to protect what's really happening, it's too late already. When they
Yeah.
are showing you, oh, inflation is this rate, it's probably been this rate for already 5 years. And now they are just letting you know that this is the official inflation rate now, right?
Yeah.
Or things like Argentina. Like it's crazy.
Mhm.
Like, I was following Twitter this week with the movement of the currency, and it's crazy. It just like went 420, 450, 470, 500. It's like 7% inflation in a day.
Yeah.
Just a change in a day. It's like crazy. But this has been cooking in the background for some time for now
Yeah.
to be so like
I
rocket.
mean, and it's not like it's anything new for Argentines. I mean, this is what happens to them every 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, no one's surprised, let's put it this way. But yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this could happen in other markets that are not expecting it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And look, yeah, to your point, we don't know anything. We do not know anything. People who think they know don't know. Like we don't know anything. Even history, we're just being told what, I don't know what we're being told. Like, is any of it
Exactly.
true? We don't know anything. I
Yeah.
think, and that's the starting point for actually also any investment, any life decision, is just admitting to yourself that you don't know anything. You're just using whatever data points you think you have to try to make the most sensible decision possible.
I like having this talk now because with our chat now, I can see more depth in your thinking, and I can see more like a philosophical thinking behind your investments, behind the way you operate. Some of the things
And
that you mentioned, it reminds me of books like Letting Go, which is like releasing what you mentioned before, like read things that are not what you like to read or what feeds your thoughts and or your beliefs, right? Talk to many people. So let go of your ego, which tries to protect you and be like, no, just read things that fulfill your desires and what you want to think. Or now when you say don't trust anybody, we don't know anything. It's like this feeling of letting go and being flexible.
yeah,
So I can see a lot of philosophy behind
it's
your
also,
thinking and also the values you mentioned. The first 10 seconds of this podcast, 1 minute of the podcast, be like two things I value in life, which is like the family, the purpose that family gives me. The rest, wealth and other stuff, it's just like secondary.
yeah, like I don't actually care about money that much fundamentally. I never really did. I value the freedom that money gives me, but it's not about money. It's not about like fast cars and spending and like staying in like expensive places. I don't really care about any of this. I just like the true level of freedom where I'm able to live the way I want to live, um philosophically, politically, religiously, together
Mm-hmm.
with my family.
Mm-hmm. Do you expect to share more of this in your YouTube channel? Because your YouTube, I see your Twitter, like when I check the feed, what you post, it's more of news, what's going on. What do you see? For example, I'm in Paris and I'm filming an helicopter that it's, flying on the ocean, over the ocean, and you share what you see. Similar to Rumble, you wanted to upload a video in Rumble when you're in France, and it's like, oh, Rumble is not available in
Yeah.
this country, right? So I can see you being like really like updating people on how you see the world through your lens via Twitter. On YouTube, I see you more on the investments, talking to lawyers, talking to accountants, etc., etc. But never saw this part of Ladislas, the more philosophical one, the more, the one that we are talking now. I can see like this depth, and I really like it, this essentialism of your values, right? Is it
Yeah, I
something
mean,
you're willing to explore in the future? Like, how do you see your YouTube channel? I want to know more about how do you see it, because it's obviously a platform that opens opportunities.
I don't think it's part of my content strategy to have like one content pillar that is like Ladislas's philosophy.
Uh-huh.
Maybe a marketer would tell me that, I should because it makes me more personable, relatable, blah blah. Um, Look,
People can just
I'm,
listen to this podcast and that's it.
yeah, yeah, they can just listen to this. Yeah. um, I don't know. Like, I'm just happy to just make content as I go around and look for, business, for real estate investments, stock market investments. I just, do the content,
Mm,
upload it,
mhm.
easy, happy, it's informative for people, but I don't really see myself, in front of a camera talking like philosophy. Um, and honestly, I'd run out of
Yeah,
stuff to say pretty quickly.
yeah, yeah. It's been almost
So
2 years that you started this YouTube channel.
yeah, the YouTube channel, yeah, roughly 2 years, yeah, something like
Yeah,
that, yeah.
I check your oldest video and it was uploaded
Cool.
2 years
Thank
ago,
you.
like scrolling, and it's like, wow, 2 years. And I'm wondering what's an opportunity that might have come up because of the YouTube channel. Is there anything that happened to be like, wow, thanks to the YouTube channel, I was able to do this, to do that, or to meet somebody that you
Yeah.
really liked? What opportunity came up through the YouTube channel?
Well, I mean, it's good
You want
for
to share? Mm-hmm.
lead generation, awareness, and then also when I go around and I try to meet some people, um, being able to say, hey, I've got this YouTube channel, as opposed to just a blog. Because when you see a random blog, you don't know how, like, my blog, I've got quite a lot of people on my mailing list, but like, you don't know this when you read it, when you see it. But the YouTube channel, kind of same thing with like Instagram, you're able to demonstrate that you have quite a few people following you. So this for sure opens doors for business. Look, to be fair, I get better treatment and service with service providers than most people. You know, if real estate agents, typically when I speak to real estate agents initially, I don't even talk about my YouTube channel. I just, talk to them through my, because I want to test them, right? So I talk to them through my like private number. But then if they figure it out, then like, sure, I get like much better service than the average person gets. So from that point of view, it's useful. But yeah, I mean, that's it. It's just a business tool like any other. And YouTube's great now. Maybe in like 7 years, no one will be on YouTube, and the number of subscribers like I have there won't mean anything. I'll have put all this work for nothing. It's like gonna
Yeah.
have like a big MySpace.
Yeah,
Like I don't
exactly. I
know.
was gonna say that. If you have 1 million followers in MySpace, be like,
Yeah, great. Well done,
congratulations.
bro.
Good,
Yeah.
bro.
So I don't know. I'm not trying to like overthink it. I'm just doing what I like doing. I think this is very important as a content creator. It's actually, so you see just too many people out there, they're trying to like do too many videos, they're trying to do this and that, and then they start hating it. Like they try to record the next video and they're like, their stomach hurts. You know, like my main priority is managing my own finances, my own portfolio, and spending time with my family. Like those are my like my core objectives. Then the, you know, making videos is secondary. I need to make sure I enjoy it, because I don't want to do something that I hate in life, because that would just be atrocious.
Yeah.
Even if
And
it
I,
means the business doesn't grow as fast, it's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine because I'm enjoying it. You know, I don't want to have a fast growing business that I hate. Like,
totally. And because
that's
you
not
are clear on
helpful.
your values.
Yeah, that's not helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. And actually, as somebody who can enroll as a client, they'd rather, be with somebody who is too busy to make videos because he's managing his 15 real estate portfolio, homes, properties around the world in 10 different countries, than somebody who is just recording videos on what he reads on the internet but
Yeah.
owns like one home. It's like, well, I'd rather go with the guy that
Yeah.
produces less videos, but he's like busy all the time reading. And what you shared with us and with the audience today, what are your habits, which is basically reading. Are there any other habits that you believe are pillar in your life right now?
Yeah, habits. Yeah, so reading, time with the family, like, podcasts, church also is important. Sports, though I have to say, since I've been on this like traveling this much after I quit corporate, I haven't been able to work out as much as I'd like to. That's like one thing that I should prioritize that I haven't been doing, but ideally this would be one of them.
I see. And we
You're
are
good at that. I'm saying this because you seem to be very good at that. Like you keep the
at
discipline
sport.
when it comes to
Oh
like the
yeah,
food and the
yeah,
sports.
yeah. I think it's something that I learned from my family early on.
Yeah,
Like I started
nice,
with sports pretty heavily with 4 years old. I
nice.
studied nutrition at university, so maybe these things shaped a little bit my life
Yeah.
in that sense. But yeah. Um, Regarding reading, probably one of the episodes, one of the guests that we had in this show that reads probably the most, as far as you shared. I'd love to know what are books that you recommend your younger self, again talking to Ladislas, younger Ladislas 10 years ago, or even like sharing it with your kids. Be like, okay, like this is something I wish I had read sooner, or even share with the audience. What are some reads that you really recommend? Could be in different areas.
Cool. Cool. So one is, I mean, obviously the Bible. Your audience is probably quite a lot of Westerners. Any Westerner should, understand their own cultural roots, whether they're Christian or not. I mean, the reality is, Christianity has been with us for many, many hundreds of years, and it was one of the core pillar of our societies for so long. So if you don't understand Christianity, you don't understand your own family background. So that's one. Two is 1984 by George Orwell. You people just need to read it. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, Big Brother 1984." Sure, sure. People need to read it. Like, actually sit down and read it. Not only is it a very enjoyable read, but it will make you question a few things. I think this is important. You'll look at things differently. So this is really a classic. And then another one that I read recently, which is really good, is I need to Google it here. Try to find the name again. I forgot it. It's called
Go.
Always with Honor The Memoirs of General Wrangel. So he was the head of the White Russian army during the Russian Civil War, who was fighting against the Bolsheviks. And there are so many lessons in terms of sacrifice, in terms of persistence, sacrifice and persistence. I think it was a beautiful, beautiful book.
Yeah. Persistence, it seems like it's a word that resonates with you and something you had to, take many spoons, in your life, like persistence, because might be, at some points tiring, or maybe just go like, wow, I'm doing a lot. Is that something that happened? You reached some point, you needed to, question yourself, should I pursue more, or is it something you enjoy so much that you're like, you're never tired, you're always energized doing what you do?
I mean, that's also why
Being a
I'm pacing
wandering
myself.
investor. Yeah.
That's also why I'm pacing myself. That's also why you're not going to see like a video every day, because slowly but surely that's how I prefer to operate. Again, I want to enjoy the journey. We're here on Earth only once. I want to enjoy my life.
And how did you get out of a pitfall when you felt like you were burned out, or when you felt like it was too much? How did you get
Yeah,
out of there?
I mean, I left. I mean, it's one of the
Did it
reasons
happen?
yeah, I mean, when I was working in corporate, it's one of the reasons that I was like ready for a change. Like, the career was going great, etc. I was working 60, 70 hours a week when I was working in Ghana. I was on the board there. I can't say I'm a fan of working 60, 70 hours a week. Even if the job was very well paid and, I had like great prospects for like, the next promotion and all of this, all of that. I just don't enjoy working 60 to 70 hours a week, waking up early in the morning, going to work, coming back late at night, not getting enough sleep, and just being constantly tired because you can never fully recharge. Like this is just, for a few years to make that money, to be able to get that freedom, that was kind of the price to pay. But yeah, no, that's unacceptable. So, I had to make a move.
I see. And well, you made the move. What a move,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Many moves, I would say, many planes, many moves. Totally. We're getting to the end of this interview. I'd like to know about maybe something you didn't share, but how living, you said 7 years in Africa,
Mhm.
shaped your life, especially in your 20s.
Um, I don't I just love freedom. Like the freedom one has in Africa is unparalleled
Yeah.
in some of these countries. And again, I'm saying this from a position of privilege because I could afford the freedom. But just this, you can do anything. You're completely free. You just, it was great. Like there's no, I didn't have to deal with, I don't know, like stuff like just regulations and like you just do, just live, just do. That's it. I don't know how to explain it. Just you just
I
live.
understand. I kind of
I mean, kind of
felt the
like in
same
Paraguay.
in yeah, exactly, Latin America.
Yeah,
That's what I was gonna say. The land of the
yeah,
free. You feel much freer
yeah,
than in Germany, or that in Spain, or when I
yeah,
was, I don't know, traveling Europe, the
yeah.
UK, like things like that. Yeah. Or even
Paraguay's great.
the US. Yeah.
I love Paraguay. Like I understand why you spend a lot of time in Paraguay. I
Yeah.
liked it a lot. Like, sure, it doesn't have all the like the fancy stuff, but you feel free in Paraguay. Um,
You
and you
do.
get that a lot of that freedom in many African countries. And again, freedom, like this level of freedom comes with downsides. Um, it comes with more uncertainty. It comes with more risk. it also means that the bad people have more freedom, not just you. But I am fine with this. I'm completely fine with this. And I know it's not for everyone. Most people say they want freedom, but in fact, they don't. They just want security, and they want, the government to provide for them. Whatever it is, even if it's like healthcare or, schools or safety, etc. I don't care about any of these things. I just want to be free. I want to be myself, and I'm fine that the criminals have their own freedom. It's fine. I'll take this as a risk.
Yeah. What do you think is the reason that expats, global citizens, travelers, they go to Southeast Asia, they go to Latin America, but it seems like Africa's there, or there's not that much content, there's not that much compared to, other popular hotspots?
I mean, the infrastructure is pretty bad, to be fair. In a lot of countries, it's actually surprisingly expensive. I mean, traveling around Africa is expensive. Like nothing's cheap. Like food's expensive, restaurants are expensive, like flights are super expensive. And a lot of these countries, you need visas, and getting a visa is a nightmare, and this and that. They're not easy places for sure. So I think that's one, like the practical aspect of it is kind of tough. And I think then there's probably a bit of bias as well. People think that Africa is super dangerous. It's less dangerous than Latin America for sure. When I was traveling in like Ghana and like Benin and Togo and like Ivory Coast and all that, sure, they're not the safest places, but they're certainly safer than being in Ipanema and Rio. So the people don't think that. They just watch a few movies on Africa, and the only movies on Africa are like movies of like genocide and like diamond traders and this and that, and they just have this like false sense of what Africa really is. And again, Africa is just so different. Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, Central Africa, and West Africa have like very little in common. Like, if you're in Ghana or you're in Mozambique, it's just as different as being in like Finland and Portugal.
And for someone who hasn't been to Africa yet, where are 2, 3, 4 places that you'd recommend for them to start this continent?
Cool. Look, if you want Africa light, as in like easy, affordable infrastructure, the whole deal, you go to South Africa. You go there, you rent a car, don't take public transport. You'll get mugged. And just like driving around the country, the roads are good, the hotels are nice, the restaurants are good. It's great.
Cape
So
Town,
you
for
do that.
example?
Yeah, I mean, do Cape Town for sure, but don't spend. I mean, that's Europe. Like Cape Town feels
Okay.
like Europe.
Okay.
So sure, go there, but then go into like a bit more north. Go
Like,
into Limpopo, go into KwaZulu-Natal, go into Mpumalanga. Then you drive into the little countries around like Eswatini. You go into Lesotho, the little country inside of South Africa. Like you do these things.
okay.
And you can do all that with a rental car that costs like $25 a day. And it's cool, like really cool. So that would be number one. If you want to go for, and you can do all the safaris you want in South Africa, they're really nice and a lot more affordable than doing safaris in like Tanzania and in Kenya. So like South Africa just ticks. I lived there for 4 years. South Africa ticks like so many boxes. Actually, if you were to ask me what's my favorite country, if I could live somewhere, if the taxes weren't so horrific, and if it wasn't so far away from everywhere, I'd be in South Africa still. Amazing. Lifestyle, like truly amazing. But again, crime, violence, but freedom also. Then I would highly encourage people to go to Madagascar. Madagascar, from a nature point of view, is absolutely stunning. Every national park is completely different from the other. I mean, it's an island that has its essentially own ecosystems. Like everything's different. The animals are different. The trees are different. Everything's different in Madagascar. It's just beautiful. So I'd really encourage Madagascar. It's the only place whenever I go there, I come back super sick. I'm always sick when I go to Madagascar. So that's a bit of a caveat. And
Any
I don't
recommendations to don't get as sick?
I don't know. I don't know, but
Okay.
I don't know. I feel
No
it's like,
way. Just assume it as part of the trip.
oh, look, last time I went there, I came back to South Africa. I was just like so bedridden. And so I had they did all these like blood tests on me, like just everything. I was like so sick. And then it was the tropical diseases center of Johannesburg. So I mean, in terms of like tropical diseases, you want to go to like London, Paris, and like Johannesburg, best in the world, right? And the doctor was like, yeah, when people come back from Madagascar, they often have stuff. We don't quite know what it is. Just, rest and
They
call it sick if things
discover
get worse.
they discover illnesses
It's
from
just,
tourists.
I mean,
Okay.
just like everything is different in Madagascar. Like I said, flora and fauna, everything's different. They had their own evolution. Probably the bacteria, viruses are different too. So, zero immunity, just boom, each time I'm down. So that would be the second one. And then the other one, though, right now it's a bit, quite a few issues, but I guess it's still pretty possible, is Ethiopia. Ethiopia was never colonized, pretty much the only country that was never colonized. I mean, the Italians came through for a bit, but it was more of an occupation rather than colonization. And they have so many interesting cultures. I mean, they have Islam, they have Judaism, they have like one of the oldest Orthodox churches historically that's there. Like they practice the same Orthodox Christianity as they have like over 1,000 years ago. It hasn't changed. So you go to these monasteries in the mountains that were carved into the directly into the mountain, and monks, like Ethiopian Christian Orthodox monks, have been living there continuously for like over 1,000 years. You see stuff like this, and it's really wonderful. So I remember going to Easter Mass during Orthodox Easter in Addis Ababa. It was in one of the cathedrals. It was an exhilarating experience. So culturally, Ethiopia packs a bunch for sure.
Wow, beautiful. Now we have 3 destinations
Yeah,
to go, and expecting to get sick in one of them,
yeah,
but all good, all
yeah.
good. You enjoy the wildlife, like the animals and everything in Madagascar. Oh, beautiful. We're wrapping up this interview, and I'm gonna ask the 2 questions that I ask at the end of every episode. The first one, Ladislas, is if you had the opportunity to write something on a giant billboard that would display for 24 hours in a capital of the world, and that the whole world would see it streamlined, everywhere for 24 hours, what would it say there?
You are being lied to.
Where would you place it? In what
I don't
capital of
know.
the world? Any?
Most.
Just like most of them, you are lied to.
You are being lied to.
You are
Yes.
being lied to. Okay. And finally, who do you think, who would you like to see coming next in this podcast? Who should come next as a guest?
Yeah, I think you should reach out to Scott Ashraf. He's a fund manager based in Uzbekistan that I interview once in a while, and I think he'll give your audience a very interesting take on how the world is changing and is really bifurcating between East and West, and what some of the implications are from a commodities point of view, from an energy point of view. So it's more investment focused, macro focused. But I think people, I mean, your audience is mostly Western.
Mhm.
Westerners, we need to understand that we are not the center of the world anymore. Yes, we were the center of the world for the past few hundred years. Amazing, great. It's brought us to where we are. Things are changing, and people don't necessarily like us that much. And we need to be ready for the changes that are going to be taking place. Because right now, people just still live in like la la land.
Changes that are taking place, would you say, especially in the Middle East?
Yeah, from a macro point of view, yeah, like what some of the policies of our governments are gonna bring us from, essentially lead us to from an economic point of view, like complete mismanagement of energy policy and also geopolitics. We are shooting ourselves in the feet, and we are probably not gonna, in aggregate, gonna become much richer as countries.
And Scott can shed some light on these topics.
Yeah, I mean, he's got his
Fantastic.
thesis. He's got his thesis. And his thesis is very interesting.
Love it. Thank you for your generosity, Ladislas, for your time, for all the topics that we covered, even like the philosophical part that people don't usually see in other places. Thanks for sharing from your values. Go ahead.
Yeah, we started the podcast talking about death, so I hope people didn't like leave within the first 2 minutes.
Yeah, but the right ones will have stayed, so it's gonna be a good filter. What we mentioned, right? People should get offended more often and start listening to things they don't usually listen to. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for staying tuned. You're gonna find Ladislas. Where they can find you? Well, I'm gonna put all your links here below, but any place in particular they can find you?
Yeah, the best thing is to subscribe to my free private list. So it's like a mailing list on the wanderinginvestor.com. And then people will get updates as I travel around the world looking for unique investment and immigration opportunities with a particular focus on emerging and frontier markets.
Everything is going to be linked, as always, in the description of where you're listening or watching this from. And yes, stay tuned. Follow Ladislas. You're going to get a ton of value. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you in the next episode. Be extraordinary. Adeu.